In this video, I'm going to go through the final exam review packet, chapter 5. Now there are quite a few problems on this page, so if you're looking for just one problem, you may have to scroll through the video a little bit, but I'd like to keep the chapter together in one video, so if it gets a little long, just know that you can scroll through as much as you need online. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about finding the slope. Now the slope of your two points is going to be with this formula here. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if you need to, label your point x1, y1, x2, y2, you might need to do that. So what I'm going to do is take my second y value of -7, subtract my first y value that's -5. And then for the denominator, my second x value is 6 minus my first x value, which is 3. Now minus a negative is going to turn this top into a plus sign. So -7 plus 5 is going to equal -2, and 6 minus 3 is 3. And I can't simplify that fraction, so this would be the answer to my slope. Now for the second one, again, if we fill in our formula, the second y1 minus the first y -3 over the second x4 minus the first x of 2 minus a negative is going to be a plus, so the top will be 4 and the bottom will be 2. And this fraction we can reduce. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now 27 here, finding the slope of your line, and then we're actually going to write the equation of the line. Now I notice that this line here is a horizontal line. And so what I'm going to write down to myself is that phrase HOI, because this is going to help me remember. Horizontal lines have 0 slope, and the equation of the line is y equal to a number, and it's going to be the number that it crosses on your y-axis, which down here is -4. And the next line, maybe a little hard to see there, I'll highlight it, going vertically, so this is a vux. This vertical line is going to have undefined slope. And the equation is going to be x equal to a number, and the number that crosses on my x-axis is -3. All right, now for number 28, we have two lines here, and what we want to do is compare the slopes to determine if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Now the first equation, I can see that my slope in this equation is this number 7. That's my m, my slope, y equals mx plus b. But my second equation is not in a form that will tell me the slope, and so I need to solve for y on my second equation, and I'm going to do that by subtracting 7x. When I do that, I get -7x plus 3, and my slope here in this line is -7. Now, for lines to be parallel, these two numbers need to be identical, which they're not. One is positive and one is negative. And for the two lines to be perpendicular, they need to be opposite signs, which these are, but they also need to have what's called reciprocals, meaning a fraction flipped upside down. So if this was 7, this would need to be -1 over 7 to be perpendicular. So these two lines are neither parallel nor perpendicular. Now again, I want to compare my slopes, and the second line here does have my slope ready to go for me, but the first line does not because it's not solved for y. So I'm going to take my first line and divide every number by 4. So my -5 divided by 4 and my 12 divided by 4. Now I have my slope that I can compare, and I have 4/5 compared to -5/4. So my fraction now has been flipped upside down, which would mean these two lines are perpendicular. All right, now number 29 says write the equation of the line, horizontal. Now I'm going to come back to this phrase that I wrote down up here. A horizontal line is always an equation y equal to a number. Now as I'm looking at my point, I know the y value that I need, and in this point, the y value that I need is -5. So because a HOI uses a y, I just need to use the y value of that point. And likewise, a vertical line, we use the phrase vux. Vertical lines have undefined slope, and x is equal to a number. That's the type of equation. Now I'm going to write down x equals for my equation, and now in my point, all I need to do is use that x value because a VUX uses the x value. So that's why that phrase is super helpful. Now for number 30, it says, what is the point slope form? Now point slope form is this formula, y minus y1 equal to our slope, and then in parentheses x minus the x1 value. Now I'm going to plug in the slope of 1/4 here. My hole punch, if you didn't have your hole punch, is actually a negative sign there. So unfortunately that hole punch really kind of screwed this up. But if you use positive because you can't see the obviously the sign because of the hole punch, you would just use 1/4. But because my answer key online has the negative shown before the hole got punched in here, I'm going to use that original value of negative. So unfortunately that hole punch got us here. But y minus the y value of -5 is equal to my slope, which should have been -1/4. And now in parentheses, x minus an x value from my point of -3. Now the final thing that I'm going to do to simplify would be make my subtracting a negative plus signs. And that's it. That's your point slope form, and now you're done. Now for 31, it says, what is the slope-intercept form? Now we're going to start here with point slope form, and then we're going to transform it into slope-intercept form. So first we're going to find our slope. So I'm going to have to, number 1, find slope. And I'm going to use my formula here, 7 minus 2, that's my second y value minus my first one. Now divide by my second x value of 3 minus my first x value of -1 is going to be the fraction 5 over, now if I add here, 4. So that's my slope. Now second, what I'm going to do is use point slope form. Because neither of these 2 points is my y-intercept point, so I'm going to need to use point slope form first. So again, that formula is over here on my paper. Pick one of the 2 points. It doesn't matter which point that you pick. I'm just going to pick the first point, but really it doesn't matter. Y minus the y value of 2 of that point, now equal to my slope that we just found, 5/4. And now in parentheses, x minus -1. Now minus a negative, we're going to turn that to a plus sign. And now I'm going to distribute my slope and solve for y. So y minus 2 will equal my 5/4 times x, and 5/4 times 1 is just 5/4. Now what I need to do is solve for y, so I'm going to add that 2 to the right side, so plus 2. Now 2 is the number 2, meaning 2 over 1, and in order to add fractions, they need to have what is called a common denominator. So the denominator here is 4. I need to make this a common denominator of 4. So I'm going to multiply both the bottom and the top by 4 and have a common denominator fraction of adding 8/4 to my 5/4. So here's going to be my function. Y equals my 5/4 x. That's my slope that I found in the beginning. And now when I add these two, when I add fractions, I add the top and I leave the bottom alone. So 5 plus 8 is going to be 13 over 4. And that is our slope-intercept form from 2 points. All right, here is question number 32. It says, find the x and the y-intercept of your standard form here, 3x plus 8y equals 12. So for the x-intercept, what you want to do is set y equal to 0. So if I have 3x plus 8 times 0, I get 12. So for my x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. Now if 8 times 0, that means I have 3x plus nothing equals 12, or just 3x equals 12. Now if I divide both sides by 3, I get an answer of 4. So you can either put the number 4, or you can write it as an ordered pair, 4, 0. And now we'll do the same process, but for our y-intercept, we want to substitute in that x is equal to 0. So 3 times 0 plus 8y is equal to 12. Well, that means this term is going to drop out. Nothing plus 8y equals 12, well, just 8y equals 12. Now divide both sides by 8, and all I need to do is reduce my fraction here. 12 and 8, they're both divisible by 4, so if I reduce, I would have 3 over 2 for my fraction. But if you wanted to write it as an ordered pair, it'd be 0, 3 halves. All right, here's number 33. What is the slope-intercept form of a line that has a slope of 2/3 and a y-intercept of 5? Well, if your formula is y equals mx plus b, I know my slope that I'll plug in for the letter m, and I know my y-intercept 5, which I'll plug in for the letter b, because your y-intercept stands for b. So we're just going to plug in the two values, the m and the b. So my slope was negative 2/3, and my y-intercept was a positive 5. And that's it. We just plug in the two values, and you have your equation. Here are the last two. Number 34 first says write the equation in slope-intercept form of the graph here that we see. Now, slope-intercept form is y equal to mx plus b. And as I'm looking at my picture, I can see my starting point here, my b, my y-intercept, is a value of positive 1. And now what I'm going to do is count from the left point to the right point how far up and to the right it goes. So I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2. That's going to be the slope of my line. So my slope is my rise over run. My rise is 3 and my run is 2. Now, similar to what we did for this problem, we're just going to plug in the value of our m into our function and the value of b into the function. So y equals a slope of 3 halves times x and plus 1, because that's where we started. Now, here's the very last question. What is the equation of the line in slope-intercept form? So again, we want y equals mx plus b. I'm going to start with my starting point that I can identify on the graph, and if I count, that's up 4. That's our starting point. And now again, like I counted here, my rise over run, in this case from the left to the right, our line goes down. So I'm going to track how far down our line went. 1, 2, 3, 4. And over to the right. Well, let's see. It looks like this point here. I'm actually going to recount this, because I thought it was going to hit here, but it looks like it doesn't hit at 5. Let's count again. It goes down 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2, 3, 4. This looks like a nice point here on the graph. So down 3, so that's a negative, and over 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe I should have looked for my point before I started. So my slope went down 3 and right 4. So now I'm going to plug those two values into my equation where you see the letter m and where you see the letter b. Y equals negative 3 over 4x plus 4. Now, one thing I normally see students miss, just kind of as a teacher of many years, many students forget to put that x in the equation. So don't forget that your slope has to be the coefficient in front of the letter x. Just something that I've noticed. And then, like I said before, maybe I should have looked at my point a little more carefully here, because it definitely doesn't hit right at 5. I should have found that point before I calculated my slope. Just kind of from experience, I should have done that first. So just kind of a couple tips for you. If you're struggling on any of the problems, please reach out to your teacher. I know they'd be happy to help you out. Good luck studying for your finals.